welcome to my kitchen. Today I'm going to be making some pumpkin pie and bringing you along for the ride. Alright, without further ado, let's jump on in. I'm going to make the filling first. I'm going to do one with the wet ingredients and one with the dry ingredients. So I'm going to start with a can of pumpkin, just plain old 100% pumpkin. Now these cans usually come with a recipe on the side of it, and that's what I recommend just using, or make your own variation of it. Make sure you get all of it out of there. Being stubborn. Set that aside. Next, you're going to need a can of evaporated milk. This is 12 fluid ounces, 354 cc's or milliliters. Eggs. Make sure you don't put any shells in. All right, we're gonna break the eggs up a little bit before I start stirring here. And mix this up really well. Okay, I think that's pretty good for now. Okay, and then our dry ingredients, we're going to mix together a cup of sugar. Now, the cup doesn't fit in my bucket very well, so I'm going to use the half a cup and just do 2 scoops. And again, that's 1 cup of sugar. I'm going to do half a teaspoon of salt. One teaspoon of cinnamon. Now these don't have to be exact measurements. You can It doesn't matter if it's rounded or flat, just season it to your taste. So 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. And then optional things to put in are ginger, cloves, and nutmeg. I think today I'm going to go ahead and put all 4 of them in. And you can tell that I don't usually, well, apparently I've used up my old container. So we're starting fresh on this one. I don't usually keep that piece. All right. 1/4 of a teaspoon of nutmeg. And the same for ginger and cloves. If you're going to put them in, 1/4 a teaspoon. Now, I don't really like cloves that much in my pumpkin pie, so I'm only going to do 1/8 of a teaspoon, so it's half of a 4th, okay? Same for the ginger. You can put, I'm putting 1/8 in, okay, instead of a 4th. Okay, I'm going to stir all that up. Nicely distributed through all the sugar. Just make sure you don't have clumps of seasoning all in one spot in your pie as it cooks. All right, and then we're just going to add this as one lump sum right into the liquids. And give that a good stir until it's all blended in. Okay, that looks like it's well blended. So now we need to make the crust. Excuse me. All right, I'm going to need to roll it out. So what I'm going to do is move this over and off the counter, as well as put some of this stuff away, and then we'll roll out the crust. Now for the crust, you want to make sure that your counter is freshly washed, as well as your hands, and then you want to make sure the counter is completely dry before you start rolling your dough on it. And to make the dough, we're going to use 1 1/4 cup of flour. Sorry, 1 1/2 cup of flour. 1 1/2. Good. Now we also need to grease and prepare our pan for the pie dough. If you don't prepare your pan, the pie is going to stick to it and you're never going to get the slices out. So you need to put some Crisco into your pie pan. A little bit messy work here. You make sure you cover all the top surfaces with the Crisco or shortening, or ghee, whatever your term for this stuff is. All right, once you've got the Crisco in it, you need to flour it a little bit. So I'm going to just take some of the flour that I'm going to be cooking with and roll it around until all the pie pan surface is covered. On the rim here too. Once it's covered, you can see there's a lot of excess flour in there. I'm just going to turn it over top of the bowl that I'm baking with. Just tap it off. Sorry for that excess noise again. Just tap it off until you've just got flour and Crisco covering your pan. Now I put it a little bit, my measurement on this flour wasn't exact, so the flour that's in there is not going to make a difference from the amounts that we're making into the pie crust. Now to this, we're going to add a 1/3 cup of the Crisco. So I've got a scoop for a 1/3 of a cup. I like using this one with the Crisco better than the metal ones. So just scoop up a 1/3 cup. And again, it doesn't have to be precise. 1/3 of a cup and scoop it out. You're going to work this in until you can't see that there's any Crisco in there at all. You could do this with 2 knives going like this, or use your hands like I do. Now, if you wanted to make a non-kosher version of this, you could use lard instead of the Crisco. It would be the same measurement, 1/3 cup. And this crust recipe is only for one crust. It doesn't do the top layer. So any pie crust that you're going to need a filling for, you'll need to use a larger recipe. Sorry, that you need a cover for, you're going to need the larger recipe. Okay, that looks pretty well blended, as you can see. And now we need to add some moisture to it. I choose to use milk. I feel like it makes it taste a little bit better than using water. But water would be sufficient if you happen to not have milk the day you're trying to make the pie. I'm going to do 1/4 cup to start with, and then I'll add extra if it doesn't look like it's wet enough. Again, I'm just going to keep using my hand. incorporate all of it in. It should start sticking together kind of like a Play-Doh mix. Okay, well, it looks like the milk is completely mixed in and it's not sticking together very well, so I'm going to add some more. Okay, this is another 1/4 of a cup, but I'm only going to add about half of it. Okay, and we'll see how that does. Yeah, that's much better. So maybe 1/3 of a cup of milk would be sufficient, since I used 1/4 of a cup and then half of another 1/4. Okay, you want your dough to look something like that once you have plenty of liquid into it. So, move that out of the way. We're going to access our flour again, and we need to flour up the counter so it doesn't stick to the counter. Now you don't have to measure this flour at all. Okay. It's just run it over the counter, and then you need your rolling pin to also have enough flour on it that doesn't stick. Get the pan out of the way here so we've got more room to work. Alright, so I'm going to just roll the pin in the flour just to get it covered. Tap off the excess. Then I'm going to try to form my dough into a little bit of a flat piece before I even start. Alright, so once you have a kind of a fat little circle on the table, you're going to just put your pin on it and roll back and forth one direction for a little bit, about medium pressure, and then go the other direction. As you see your pin lose its flour, go ahead and add extra, and then just keep changing the direction that you're using to put pressure so that it becomes a circle. If you see that you're getting a large amount near the edges, you can push that back to the center by starting at the edge and pushing to the center. Starting at the edge and pushing to the center. Again, just putting more flour in the roller. Your goal is to make this bigger than the pie pan because it's got to fit into that middle wedge there. And you don't want it to be paper thin either. Okay, that definitely looks big enough, but just to make sure, take your pan, flip it over, and kind of just hover it over top. And if it looks like it's extending at least 1 inch around the sides, you're good to go. I'm going to go just a little bit bigger. Okay, now the trick is, or the goal here is to pick this up in one piece to slide it into the pan. Some people fold theirs in 4ths and then pick it up that way. That doesn't work particularly well for me. I tend to ruin it. So what I've learned to do is take your pin to set it down and the crust, kind of wrap it around the pin and roll it back. Get your pan in position. Try not to get too much flour on the bottom of the pan. And as I'm lifting, I'm going to put, there it goes. Let's try that again. Again, lifting is the hardest part, I think. Okay. As I'm lifting, I'm going to slide the pan underneath of it until it gets right to the edge. And then I'm going to replace the dough back into the pan. Now you can see it's got a little concaveness there. We need to make sure it fits to the bottom. So I'm going to just gently lift and let it settle back into the middle so that it touches the bottom the entire way around. good and touching. Okay, so the dough now touches the bottom of the pan all the way around, nice and firmly, and there's no holes in it. If you do happen to tear it, you can put it back in your bowl, add a little bit of milk, rework it so that it's nice and malleable, and then re-roll it. Now sometimes the filling is too much for the actual pie pan. You need to make sure you have one that has high shoulders on it, or a deep pie pan, I should say. Okay, and then I'm just going to pour it in. And if you see that you're reaching the rim, go ahead and stop. But this one looks like it's going to fill it completely without overflow. And we're just going to scrape the bowl down. Get every last little drop we can in there. Make the edges nice and neat so it's not all this floppy stuff hanging out. You can take a knife and just go around the rim. If you don't have a knife handy, or like me, I'm too lazy to go get one. If you just take your hands and just press it against the glass edges, it'll cause the dough to get very thin and fall off or pull away. And then you can just scrape it off. Next step is now you've got a little bit of a pudginess hanging up in the air. We're going to just tuck that edge under and push it against the rim. Tuck and press. Tuck and press. Just be careful that you don't slush your liquid around too much. Tuck and press. All right, now it's ready to go in the oven. Usually if you do this for 1 hour on 350, that's what I think I'm gonna do today. 1 hour at 350, and we'll go from there. Okay, it is finished in the oven now. I did bake it for 1 hour and 10 minutes. Now I'm gonna just let it sit on a cooling rack to cool. You can either leave it on a burner like this to cool off, or if you happen to have a rack, you can use one. Now after it does cool down to room temperature, you do want to refrigerate this. Pumpkin, because of all the sugars in this, is going to go bad very quickly if it's left out at room temperature. So once it cools down, you need to cover it with some kind of cling wrap first before you put aluminum foil on, because aluminum foil and the pumpkin, they have a chemical reaction that doesn't work well together. So put your plastic wrap on first and then aluminum foil, and then tuck it in the fridge. Make sure you eat it within the next 3 days, again, because that pumpkin filling does go bad very quickly. And that's it, our pumpkin pie.